Good evening. Welcome in daily UPSC Editorial audio program. West Asian Time Bomb: The Times of India. The path towards a popularist civil society. The Hindu. Panchayats earn only 1% of their revenue through taxes. Now the full editorial. West Asian Time Bomb: The Times of India. US is stepping up bombing in the region. Bond Bombings in the region won't help. Instead, it should rain in Israel and stop war in Gaza. Times of India editorials. Latest American strikes on more than 85 targets in Iraq and Syria, killing at least 40 people. Again, inch up threats for a wider regional conflict. They were in retaliation for the killings of three American servicemen on a Jordan Jordan base by militias linked to Iran. Raids were carried out by B-1 bombers flown directly from US. There are fears US is slow walking into another prolonged conflict. Symptoms and problem. But what US is fighting are essentially symptoms. Since the beginning of Israel-Hamas war, Iran-backed militias, part of Tehran's so-called axis of resistance, have stepped up their attacks in the region. Their single-point agenda is to stop Israel's attack on Gaza. Hydra-headed challenges. These militias are spread across a wide geography with decentralized military assets. There is no way US can take them out at one go, nor can it deter them as shown by continuing Houthi disruptions in Red Sea. Only option then is for US to engage in prolonged bombing campaign that's politically decay in the US election year. Mistakes can be catastrophic. Heathrow, US and Iran have avoided attacking each other directly, but given the spread of Iran Revolutionary Guards commanders and American personnel in the region, mistakes can happen politically, forcing Tehran and Washington to switch to direct attacks, which would be devastating. Israel is the issue. All of this can be avoided if there is a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Biden have given Netanyahu a very long rope, but Israel's operation is mostly killing civilians in Gaza. Nor is Israel any closer to rescuing the remaining Israeli hostages. True, Biden has started sanctioning Israeli settler for violence in West Bank, but more needs to be done to rein in Israel getting into a wider, prolonged West Asia conflict for the sake of Netanyahu-led Tel Aviv is just not worth it for Washington. The path towards a pluralist civil society, the Hindu. The alternative is having a civil society that functions as the handmaiden of an authoritarian state. Asim Ali is a political researcher and columnist. During the inaugural session of the new parliament, controversy erupted after members were gifted copies of the Indian constitution, wherein the preamble appeared to have dispensed with the term socialist and secular. Interestingly, the civil society debate that followed remained hemmed in on whether either of these terms defined the true spirit of constitution. Without going into the merits of that debate, there is a largely unaddressed facet to point out, one which ought to comprise the basis of any such deliberative inquiry: the meaning of the opening words of the preamble, "We the people." The meaning or character of our popular sovereignty is often treated as a convenient myth or as a purely abstract assumptions in our civil society discussions. Yet, as constitutional scholar Sarvani Sen argued in her book The Constitution of India, Popular Sovereignty and Democratic Transformations, the revolutionary potential of the Constitution inheres in this very spirit of popular sovereignty. She looks at how the idea of popular sovereignty and its relation to constitutionalism developed as a result of intergenerational discourse in Indian political thought during the pre-founding colonial period. One can interpret the enactment of the constitution as the culmination of a decades-long process of dialogue among contending political actors, wherein an important part of it focused on the character of the envisaged republic. The preamble explicitly anchors the legitimizing end of the republic in terms of securing justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, and equality of status and of opportunity to all Indian citizens. When we reduce sovereignty of the political community to mere state sovereignty, we reduce the constitutional promises given above to vague aspirations floating in either. The constitution can only remain a living force in our democracy as long as the phrase "we the people" can somehow approximate to a discerning citizenry, which effectively discharges its agency as vigilant participants. The elite versus non-elite spheres. The Western tradition of civil society tended to grant such a watchdog function of counterbalancing the state's drive to monopolize sovereign power to an elite public sphere. Balancing the state implies constraining the excesses of government power. This liberal public sphere, as described by theorists such as Jurgen Habermas platform the educated middle class, held to be engaged in a rational discourse centered on individual autonomy and self-interest. The English language arena in India, particularly in journalism and civil society activism, reflexively borrowed from this Western discourse. The directing role of a modernizing elite, further the normative assumptions underlying the question who constitute this modernizing elite, serve to redouble the hold of the traditional elites on the public sphere. Broadly, the public sphere tended to privilege the view of segments that skewed male, upper class, and dominant caste. Yet, this elite public sphere has largely remained inert in the face of severe challenges to prevailing constitutional governance. Indeed, the more forceful democratic claims to the mental of popular sovereignty have emanated from what we can term as the non-elite counter sphere. This is the counter sphere of organizations and movements, social movements, farmers and labor groups, human right activists, subaltern caste and tribal movements, and their powerful examples such as Pune agitation by Dalit against caste-based violence, the Pathalgadi movement of tribal in Jharkhand, the farmers' movement of Punjab and Haryana, and the nationwide protest by Muslims led by women against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Often the liberal public sphere, even while being empathetic towards these movements, seeks to cast them in the subordinate role of sectional movements or emotional irrational upsurges, which can at the most merit conditional support. Yet, if we refuse to accord these counter sphere political actors a position of complete equality within our civil society, we will we will lose the liberatory potential of these radically democratic forms of popular assertions and mass protest. Ambedkar's framing. B.R. Ambedkar has framed the preamble in terms of heralding a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principle of life and which can be divorced from each other. Liberty cannot be divorced from equality, equality cannot be divorced from liberty, nor can liberty and equality be divorced from fraternity. Without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Equality without liberty would kill individual initiative. Equally, he refused to harbor naive presumptions about the self perpetuating character of these constitutional principles. In his essay Buddha and the Future of Religion, he wrote Buddha also did not believe that law can be guarantee for breaches of liberty or inequality. In all societies, laws plays a very small part. It is intended to keep the minority within the range of social discipline. Since the majority is constrained not by law but by morality, Ambedkar held that religion, in the sense of morality, must therefore remain the governing principle in every society. It might be instructive to juxtapose Ambedkar's plea for a transcendent civil morality with Gandhi's conception of Swaraj or self-rule. In the monograph Unconditional Equality, Gandhi's religion of resistance, historian Ajay, Ajay Iskaria explains that Swaraj for Gandhi did not confine itself to a mechanistic self-rule, but a creative process of self-realization through which one might reach out towards a more secure and substantive plane of freedom and equality. The means to achieve Swaraj was thus Satyagraha, defined as truth force and love force. For him, Gandhi, sovereign power is not exemplified only in the state. Rather, every self is deeply festered, and sovereignty is ubiquitous, always exercised every day by the self. His career wrote. Therefore, Gandhi's practice of ahimsa cannot be divorced from his insistence on recognizing a deeply fissured self, the politically fabricated wholeness or boundness accorded to the self, whether Hindu self or Muslim self, mirroring the colonizing Europe's axioms of national sovereignty has led to much bloodshed in the subcontinent in the last century. The follow of mimicking the imperialist arrogance wrecked other countries as well, not least the militaristic Japan of the first half of the 20th century. The book Japan's Orient, Rendering Past into History, 1995, uncovers how Japanese violent militarism was built on the fundamental assumptions of a a perfected modern self. This construction of this supremely confident self necessitated a reflective displacement of the Western Orientalist category of a backward other from itself onto other subordinated pupils. According to Tanaka, Japan's historians constructed their own backward Orient defined by Asiatic culture. Asiatic nature was characterized by its gentleness, moral ethics, harmony, and communalism. Japan's genius lay in its ability to adapt creatively only those Asiatic characteristics that were harmonious with its own nature, and Japan thus became the processor of the best of Asia. Having the right dialogue, it becomes clear that a progressive civil society in India can only be a plural civil society if it is structured on the free and equal participation of every community, regarding any particular community as socially backward or intellectually inferior compared to any assured authentic self inevitably skids into perilously unexamined pride. The path towards a pluralist civil society must thus be forged through honest and introspective dialogue. This is not the shallow but the commonplace mode of dialogue, a form of debate focused on achieving a framework of objectively correct knowledge. But the particular form of dialogue stressed by Gandhi, Ambedkar, and modern theo- uh, theorist of deliberative democracy seeks to understand the position of the other. It is through this empathetic engagement with the concerns and the world views of other that we can build a stable foundation of mutual self understanding, thus opening up possibilities for genuine solidarity. The alternative is a civil society with little self-knowledge beyond chauvinistic pride and little agency beyond being the handmaiden of an increasingly authoritarian state. Panchayats earn only 1% of their revenue through taxes. Most of their revenue comes from the center and the states as grant. Only 1% of the revenue of panchayats was earned by them, with the rest being raised as grants from the state and the center. So, data specifically 80% of the revenue was from central government grants. Only 50% was from state government grants. Consequently, the revenue raised by panchayats formed a minuscule share of the state's own revenue. Panchayats act on three levels: Gram Sabhas, Panchayat Samitis, and Jila Parishads. They are responsible for for a variety of tasks including agriculture, rural housing, water management, rural electrification, healthcare, and sanitation. In some cases, Jila Parishads are also responsible for maintaining schools, hospitals, dispensaries, and minor irrigation projects. However, due to dependence on the center and the state for their funds, most panchayats suffer from interference from the top two tier of the system. According to news reports, in August last year, several panchayats heads protested in Chennai asking for independence of the Panchayati Raj. A news report from Telangana last year stated that the failure of the state government in releasing funds on time forced sarpanches to use private funds. The Standing Committee on Rural Development and Panchayati Raj said in March last year that 19 out of 34 state union territories did not receive any funds under the Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan scheme in financial year 23. The program was started for for building capacity and training elected representatives. The recently report by the Reserve Bank of India on the finances of Panchayati Raj institutions for 2022-23 argues that one of the ways forward is to promote greater decentralization and empower local leaders and officials. According to the report, panchayats had recorded a total revenue of 35,354 crore in 2022-23. Chart 1 of this, just 737 crore was earned by their own tax revenue. Panchayats can earn this through taxes on profession and trades, land revenue, stamps and regulation fees, taxes on property and service tax. Panchayats also earned 1,494 crore through non-tax revenue, which is mostly earnings from interest payments and Panchayati Raj programs. In contrast, they earned 24,699 crore as grants from the central government and 8,148 crore as grants from the state governments. Chart 2 shows that these numbers per panchayat in 2022-23, each panchayat earned just 21,000 as its own tax revenue and 73,000 as non-tax revenue. In contrast, each panchayat earned about 17 lakh as grants from the central government and more than 3.25 lakhs as grants from the state governments. In essence, just 1% of panchayats revenue come from their own revenue. Chart 3. When we look at the average revenue earned per panchayat in 2022-23, there are wide variations among states. In Kerala, the average revenue raised by each panchayat was over 60 lakh in 2022-23. West Bengal came a close second with an average revenue of 57 lakh per panchayat. Uh, the revenue was over 30 lakh per panchayat in Assam, Bihar, Karnataka, Odisha, Sikkim, and Tamil Nadu, and less than 6 lakh in Andhra Pradesh, Haryana, Mizoram, Punjab, and Uttarakhand. Due to meager revenue raising potential, panchayats' share in respective states' own revenue was poor. For instance, in Andhra Pradesh, revenue receipts for panchayat form just 0.1% of the state's own revenue. The revenue of panchayats in Uttar Pradesh formed 2.5 of the state's own revenue, the highest among states. Chart 5 shows the revenue of panchayat as share of states in revenue 2022-23. Thank you.